As our nation reflects on the historic inauguration we witnessed today, we also can't forget what happened at this very Capitol just 2 weeks ago, a deadly attempted insurrection, one that was both shocking and appalling to people all across the world. But if you were to ask political analysts, it wasn't all that surprising. That's because ever since Donald Trump first announced his presidency, white nationalists have hitched their wagon onto his campaign for the White House because of promises like banning all travel for Muslims and deporting undocumented immigrants. Critics are calling Trump's rhetoric over these last few years a lightning rod for racists. The roots of white supremacy run deep in American history. While some want to believe the days of the Ku Klux Klan and segregationists are behind us, images of the Confederate flag and a noose set up feet away from the nation's Capitol building are rekindling our country's dark past. The Trump rally turned deadly riot in D.C., confirming there are still Americans harboring hate for non-whites. But this wasn't the first time Trump's allure to racists reared its ugly head.
Hail Trump! Hail our people! Hail victory!
Shortly after his 2016 election win, white nationalists were chanting Trump's name, some even raising their arms in the Nazi salute. Months later,
Jews will not replace us!
The prejudice was put on public display. Anti-Semitic protesters making their presence known as they marched through Charlottesville, Virginia.
We are determined to take our country back. We're going to fulfill the promises of Donald Trump.
Former head of the Ku Klux Klan, David Duke, openly endorsing Donald Trump at the rally the next day. White nationalist hate groups have increased drastically throughout the Trump era, jumping from 85 known organizations in 2016 to 155 just 3 years later. Researchers say many of today's domestic terrorists were radicalized online, adopting their extreme views from social media, driven by a deep fear of demographic change. A world where whites are no longer the majority in America. And while white nationalists were ramping up recruiting on platforms like Parler, Trump was using the problematic term for his own political gain.
We're not supposed to use that word. You know what I am? I'm a nationalist, okay? I'm a nationalist.
The president later deflecting when confronted about his controversial comment.
You called yourself a nationalist. Some people saw that as emboldening white nationalists. Now people are also saying that the president.
That's such a racist
there
question.
are some people.
And as racial tensions intensified during 2020's Black Lives Matter protests, the nation's leader leaned away from condemning racism while millions watched.
Are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups?
Sure. Who would you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right-wing militia.
Stand back and stand by.
The rise of white nationalism under America's 45th president culminating with an attempted insurrection at our country's capital. Horrifying footage showing Trump supporters violently forcing their way into a federal building.
There's a guy like dying over there.
Critics calling this the deadly end result of Trump galvanizing his followers with the false idea he had been robbed of the White House. And as we await more details on Trump's impending Senate impeachment trial in the coming weeks, several of his supporters are facing federal charges. The FBI making well over 100 arrests in connection to that Capitol siege, and agents are still searching for several others. Reporting in our nation's capital, I'm Eric Cox for BNC.